The NHL had every reason to suspend Mike Richards. On-ice officials called it intent to injure. A man left Philadelphia on a stretcher. The league watched the tape. The league said nothing. 5 months later, they wrote the rule that would have saved him. David Booth didn't get that rule. He got the hit and the silence that followed it. Before any of this, David Booth was a kid from Detroit who took the long road. No early entry shortcuts, no junior hockey hype. He enrolled at Michigan State and played 4 full years of NCAA hockey before ever turning pro. The Florida Panthers drafted him 53rd overall in 2004, but he didn't rush the jump. He finished school. He majored in supply chain management. Then, in the summer of 2006, he signed his first pro contract. By his third NHL season, he had become the best player on a bad team. 31 goals, 60 points. Team MVP by fan vote. Home crowds at the Bank Atlantic Center would chant his name every time he touched the puck. For a Florida franchise that had missed the playoffs for nearly a decade, Booth was the closest thing to a reason to watch. On July 1st, 2009, the Panthers rewarded him 6 years, $25.5 million. Panthers general manager Randy Sexton, announcing the deal, called Booth an important part of the club's future and a role model for other players. He was 24 years old. He was the face the franchise was planning to build the next decade around. That same summer, USA Hockey invited him to the national team's orientation camp. The 2010 Winter Olympics were 6 months away, held in Vancouver. Booth later said making that roster was his goal for the season. Analysts considered him a near lock for GM Brian Burke's team. So think about what he was holding in October 2009. A long-term contract, a franchise role, a city that chanted his name, an Olympic jersey that was almost his. 4 months after signing, he walked into Philadelphia on October 24th to face the Flyers. Everything on that list was still in front of him. By the end of the second period, none of it would be. Late in the second period, with the Panthers trailing the Flyers, Booth cut across the Flyers' blue line with the puck. He dropped a backhand pass to his line mate, Stephen Weiss, on the opposite side. His eyes stayed with the pass, tracking it across the ice. Mike Richards, the Flyers' captain, was closing from his other side. Booth's shoulders were half-turned. His body was still drifting forward from the pass. He never saw Richards coming. Shoulder caught jaw, flush, in open ice. He was unconscious before he landed. What the arena saw next wasn't a hockey hit. It was a body going down without any of the reflexes that usually catch a player on the way to the ice. His face dragged along the surface. Blood on the ice. Broken nose. A cut above the eye deep enough to need stitches. He didn't move. The Wachovia Center went quiet. 9 years earlier, Scott Stevens had ended Eric Lindros's run as a Flyer with a similar open ice shoulder in Game 7 of the 2000 Eastern Conference Finals. Philadelphia had lived through one of these before. The crowd knew exactly what it was looking at. The trainers ran out. Booth was strapped to a stretcher and carried off. He spent the night at a Philadelphia hospital in a city that wasn't his, while his team flew home without him. The referees didn't hesitate. They assessed Richards a 5-minute major for interference and a game misconduct for intent to injure. 2 separate calls, 2 separate judgments. The officials on the ice, with no slow motion review and no league office to answer to, watched the hit in real time and ruled it deliberate. Now, look at the play itself. Booth's back is turned. The puck is already gone. He can't brace. He can't drop his shoulder. Every NHL player who's skated across a blue line with his head down has been in that exact position. They all recognize it on the first replay. Panthers captain Brian McCabe, watching from the bench, said what everyone in the building was thinking. The guy was in a vulnerable position, McCabe said, and you hope a player wouldn't cream him like that. That's the point before any rules arguments. A defenseless man got dropped. Keith Ballard, the Panthers defenseman, put it publicly, Richards knew Booth was in a bad spot, went after him anyway, and had done it before. Booth was released from the hospital the next day. The league had already started reviewing the hit. They spent 1 day on it. On October 25th, the NHL announced its decision. No suspension. The rationale came from League Vice President Bill Daly. His explanation was technical. The hit, Daly said, was not late enough to warrant supplemental discipline. Booth had released the puck, yes, but not long enough before contact for the check to qualify as an illegal late hit under the rules the league had on file. Flyers GM Paul Holmgren added his own defense of his captain. His feet never left the ice, Holmgren said. It was a shoulder hit. Clean. That became the public narrative. One skate stayed on the ice. The pass had just left the stick. Both technicalities pointed in the same direction. Within the rulebook, as written in October 2009, there was nothing to suspend. The on-ice call of intent to injure was quietly forgotten. Inside the Panthers' locker room, nothing about the decision felt clean. Ballard kept talking. The league had spent years claiming it was trying to cut hits like this out of the game, and now a player had gone down unconscious, and the league had done nothing. The hockey world absorbed the ruling and kept skating. 2 months later, the Panthers and Flyers met again. December 21st, 2009, the Wachovia Center. Same building, Booth still on the injured list with post-concussion symptoms. 4 fights in that game. One of them was McCabe, the Panthers captain, fighting Mike Richards. Booth watched it from home. He didn't return to the lineup until January 31st, 2010. 45 games missed. Just over 3 months from the night he was stretchered off. 5 weeks after his return, the Panthers played the Flyers in Florida. March 3rd, 2010. 2 minutes and 45 seconds into the first period, Booth skated up to Mike Richards and asked him to fight. Already the third fight of that period, Panthers players had dropped the gloves in the game's opening 5 seconds. It was the first fight of Booth's 4-year NHL career. Booth was not an enforcer. He had never dropped the gloves as a pro. Then he went out and had the best game of his season. 1 goal, 3 assists, a 7-4 Panthers win. His only public comment after that was that he wanted to get it off his chest. 4 days later, on March 7th, 2010, the rest of the league found out what the Booth ruling had actually set in motion. Pittsburgh was playing Boston. Matt Cook of the Penguins delivered a shoulder to the head of Bruins center Mark Savard from the blind side. After Savard had released a shot, he hit the ice unconscious. Stretcher, grade 2 concussion. Savard returned briefly in the following playoffs, but played his final NHL game in January 2011 after another concussion. The NHL reviewed the Cook hit and ruled it a clean shoulder. No suspension. Same reasoning the league had used on Richards 5 months earlier. But this time, the reaction was different. Savard was a bigger name. Boston was a bigger market. The outcry reached a volume that the Booth case never had. The league office, facing pressure from general managers, broadcasters, and players, reversed course. On March 24th, 2010, the NHL introduced Rule 48, a new prohibition on blindside hits where the head was the principal point of contact. Around the league, it became known almost immediately as the Matt Cook Rule. It should have been the David Booth Rule. The hit was identical. Blindside, after the puck was gone, shoulder to head. Unconscious player, stretcher, long-term concussion. The league's initial ruling was identical. The rulebook used to justify the ruling was identical. The only thing different between October 24th, 2009 and March 7th, 2010 was who was watching. The new rule would have cost Richards a multi-game suspension for what he did to Booth. It arrived 5 months too late. Richards paid nothing. Booth received nothing. The protection arrived in time for the next player who went down. Booth came back the following season and played all 82 games. On paper, the comeback looked real. It wasn't. March 25th, 2010. 8 weeks after Booth returned from the Richards concussion, he reached back to retrieve a loose puck in the offensive zone. Canadiens defenseman Yaroslav Spacek stepped up, shoulder to head. Booth went face down on the ice and stayed there. No penalty on the play, no suspension, no controversy. His second major concussion in 5 months. He was done for the season. Final count for 2009-2010, 28 games played out of 82. The Olympics he had organized his entire year around were already over. Team USA played in Vancouver without him and lost the gold medal game to Canada in overtime. Silver. The next season, 2010-11, he played every single game. 23 goals. Led the Panthers in goals. On the surface, the comeback was real. That's the number that gets quoted. Here's the number that doesn't. Before the Richards hit, Booth was a .83 points per game player. Over the next 337 NHL games, his rate dropped to .37, less than half. But the player inside it was no longer the one Florida had signed at $25.5 million. In October 2011, the Panthers traded him to Vancouver. The team that had called him a franchise cornerstone 2 years earlier was done waiting. About 2 months into his time with the Canucks, on December 6, 2011, Colorado's Kevin Porter crossed the ice with his knee extended and hit Booth knee on knee. MCL sprain in his right leg, 6 weeks out. Porter's punishment, 4 games suspended, $18,000 in fines. An extended knee on a play that sprained a ligament got 4 games. An open ice shoulder hit to an unsuspecting head on a play that caused a grade 2 concussion and derailed a career got a 5-minute major that the league review validated as clean. The NHL in December 2011 could see a knee. In October 2009, on the same player, it couldn't see a head. The rest of Booth's NHL career played out in slow motion. Vancouver tried to get value out of him for 2 more seasons. Injuries kept interrupting. His role shrank. After the 2013-14 season, the Canucks bought out the remainder of his contract. Toronto picked him up on a 1-year deal and played him in 59 games. 7 goals. He went back to the KHL next, 2 seasons in Russia. Then back to North America for 1 more attempt. A tryout with Detroit. The Red Wings kept him for 28 games and quietly let him go. His last NHL game was in 2018, 12 years after his first. Final NHL totals, 530 games, 124 goals, 112 assists. 4 teams. The career that bent upward to 31 goals at age 24 bent back the other way for the next 9 seasons and never came back. Most players in that position retire, write a statement, take a front office job, disappear from the sport. Here's what the NHL didn't cost him: the game itself. He signed with Dynamo Minsk in Belarus, then Norway for 3 seasons, then Germany. Then in Hungary, he played 9 games and scored 17 points. In May 2025, at age 40, he signed with Melbourne Ice in the Australian Ice Hockey League. He put up over 60 points in just 14 regular season games and helped Melbourne win the Goodall Cup, the 3rd oldest championship trophy in hockey. In December 2025, he signed with the Fife Flyers of Scotland's Elite Ice Hockey League. He's 41 years old. When he announced the Australia move, his daughter was sitting on his lap during the interview. He isn't doing this for money or for 1 more NHL contract. He told NHL.com directly that he knows other ex-players find it confusing, but that he and his family have come to love the experience after thinking hockey was finished for him in 2018. What the league couldn't protect, couldn't punish, and couldn't even name as illegal until a more famous player went down exactly the same way, his career, Booth rebuilt on his own terms. On ice, the NHL never watches. In buildings it doesn't broadcast from. In countries where most fans have never heard of Mike Richards. In a league that moved on from both the question and the player, he was the one who never moved on from the game. Richards went on to win 2 Stanley Cups with the LA Kings, starting in 2012. Booth spent that same spring getting healthy enough to play 5 playoff games, his first and only NHL postseason appearance. 2 captains, 2 very different endings. The league chose one of them. What do you think ended Booth's NHL career? Drop your answer in the comments. If this story hits home, super thanks means a lot. It helps us keep digging into stories like this one. And if you've made it this far, hit subscribe. Next one is already lined up. It's a story most fans never got the full truth about.